We're live.
We're live. We've done it.
We are live. We have just come over from our awesome conversation on Instagram in regards to trying to have it all. And we've been diving into some really gritty stuff, haven't we? And we finished on someone made a comment of how they believe that the expectation is so high of women to perform and achieve. And really, like, my belief in this is that this is all driven by the person's expectations, our expectations of ourselves. And I know that my initial core wound, as they like to call it, is that I'm not good enough. I don't do enough. It's not good enough what I do. It's always that. And so when you have that there, the expectation is always going to be high, always. And then that drives us to compete with men. But we don't want to be competing with men. Why would we want to compete? We want to be celebrating our differences. Take the fight out, as far as I'm concerned. Make life easier. What do you think, Claire?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's interesting when you talk about expectations, because again, this is something that comes up with my clients all the time. It's like, I call it like the shoulds. Like, I should be doing this, I should be doing that, I should be doing this. And I was recently on a friend's podcast and it's called Tyranny of the Shoulds, which I love.
That's awesome.
Really, really cool. So we can link afterwards. But the first, so the one that I was on was about chasing the money. That was the first Tyranny of the Should. And how, I was sort of financial security and financial independence was really important to me, and still is to a certain extent. It's something that I'm still working on, still unpicking, as to why I feel like this need to sustain myself without any support from anybody else. Because that then drives me to, kind of what I used to do, which was overachieve, and not letting anybody else help me with that or take any slack. So that was the first podcast. And then I've just literally this morning listened to the second one, and it was about the milestones that become millstones. So all those like, right, I need to get the job, I need to buy my first house, I need to get married. And then often the disappointment that you feel when you've achieved it, you're like, I'm supposed to be happy now. I'm supposed to have reached the pinnacle of what I've been working towards. So why don't I feel great?
The satisfaction is not there, is it? It's just not there because it wasn't for us, was it? This whole white picket fence, family car, holidays and whatever, and you look at it and it's just so empty. It's just so empty for me.
I mean, this is where I struggle a little bit, because I worked in advertising, so I knew. You're laughing. I knew what we were doing. We were selling an aspiration. We were selling, a dream of get X, Y, Z, and look how happy you are. And then you kind of get there and you go, oh, maybe this isn't quite what I thought it was going to be. And I've been sold a dream, but actually, whose dream is it? Is it mine? Whose is it? Whose dream is this? And this is where, when I work with clients, we start with unpicking right from the beginning. So much of us have got these narratives in our head that are just going round and round and round on loop of like, I should do this, I should do this, I should, I have to do this, I can't not do that, these people will be let down, etc., etc. And we just start with that and go, what is that thought that keeps going round and round in your head? Because there will be one of, maybe it's like, God, I wish I could just run away, or whatever it is that keeps you awake at night and you go, if only, or I'll be happy when, or is this it? So we start with that and we kind of just go, what is it that's going round and round in loop in your head, and where is that coming from? Whose voice is that? And then the other thing is, and we were talking about this a minute ago, is we numb out our emotions. We don't really know how we feel. So the most you'll hear people say is, I'm stressed, or you probably get, I'm anxious.
It means nothing. Stressed. What does that
mean? What actually is underneath that? Is it fear? Is it sadness? Is it grief? Like, what actually is going on here? What are the real emotions that we're not letting ourselves feel. And then it's like, what is actually important to you? Not what's important to your family, as in, you know, your parental figures, not what's important to what all your mates are doing, not what's important to, like, you know, all these people that you're comparing yourself to. What is actually important to you? And some of us just don't know. We don't know.
The opportunity. No one's, a lot of the time, I mean, when I speak about like coming up in my generation, so I knew what I wanted to do, right? I wanted to be an actress. I wanted to go to drama school. And my mum, you never would have guessed, would you? My mum and my stepdad turned around and said, no, you know, you've got to go to work. And I completely understand that. You know, we from a working class family, that's what they were told. That's what they had to do. And that's what Nan and Grandad's before that, that's what they had to do. So there's a lineage there. So at that first hurdle, everything I wanted wasn't there. Do you know what I mean? So then I'm not fulfilling the direction that I really truly want to go. So then I start filling it somewhere else. And that goes into, like, it's all about the money. It's all about the live fast, spend hard, you know, the drugs and the drinking and the basically the annihilation. Because apparently that's part of having it all. When you look at that, when you you want to work in the city, sweet. Okay, you've got to go out and you've got to socialize. You got to drink like a man. And I remember me and my mates feeling really proud of ourselves that we could drink a few fellas under the table, you know? And I look and I think, where did I get that from? Like, where did I get that from? And how on earth did I think that that was good? How did I think that was good?
Well, the other thing is as well, is we want to fit in. It's, you know, part of our makeup is to belong. You know, it's one of our core needs as humans. And so we want to feel part of the tribe, whatever that tribe is. And if that tribe is your workmates who are all acting in that way, you want to fit in. You know, you want to be part of it. You want to be accepted. So we find ourselves in situations where, a core part of our being is not being honoured, but we're so caught up in, you know, like I say, wanting to fit in and wanting to belong. And it's interesting what we were saying about sort of, you get to a certain age where, you know, in your 20s and stuff, perhaps you're even more influenced by that stuff, but you get into your 30s, you get into your 40s. And as you said, that's when you start to go, hang on a minute. And like you say, people call it a midlife crisis. I call mine a midlife epiphany.
Nice.
It wasn't a crisis. It was what the hell am I doing? How did I get so disconnected from myself? How did I get here, basically? And, you know, on the surface, I did have it all. You know, I had a really good career. I was married. I had a nice house. I had lovely holidays. I had a really nice life. I actively chose not to have children. That was a very difficult decision, but I actually realized that that was maybe the thing that was going to tip me, and I couldn't have that as well.
How did that make you feel? Because isn't that part of having it all?
Do you know what? I sat down. I remember thinking, because I got to my late 30s and I was like, you know, it's everyone's saying, when are you going to have a family? When are you going to have a family? And I was like, later. It was always later.
Yeah.
And I had to really sit down and go, why is it later? Is it because I don't feel supported in this relationship to bring a child into the situation? That was one question I was asking myself. Another question was, do I actually really want them? You know, at my core, what do I want? Not what my mum wanted. She wanted a grandchild. What do I want? And, you know, and then I looked at just the practicalities of it. I was the main breadwinner and I was like, how will this work? How will this work? And I had this vision of me getting up, you know, running around like a lunatic, dropping the kid at a nursery, like getting the train into work, running around like a headless chicken, running home to get the train, missing pickup and getting fined by the nursery, whatever. And then I just had this vision of it. And I just was like, I want no part of that.
You've just described having it all to the T, haven't you, really? That's it.
I just was like, no. And then also there were some other deeper sort of things that were going on with me about whether that is what I wanted. You know, did I want to be a mother? So, I mean, to make that decision, I actually took myself off to Belize, as you do.
Of course.
And went on a volunteering retreat and looked after some cats. And
what is it? It's the cliche of the woman and the cat. What is?
I know, right? And at the end of that trip, what sealed it for me is I felt alive on that trip. I felt like me. I felt really connected to my soul. And I came back and I told my husband I did not want children. And people sort of say, oh, do you regret that decision? Because I'm not with that husband anymore. I got divorced. And, you know, as soon as I got divorced, they were like, oh, well, maybe you'll have kids now because, you know, you'll meet someone new and you'll change your mind. But for me, that was the right decision. But that was the sacrifice for me. It's like, I can't have it all. And I don't want to half-heartedly go into that.
Is that when you realised that you couldn't have it all?
Probably, yeah. Because you know, you can't go into parenting half-heartedly.
No.
You have to be all in. And I didn't know within myself whether I could be all in. So for me, I was like, then I'm out. And yeah, I do remember thinking that's the thing that's had to give. But even then, I sort of then poured myself probably more into my career because I was like, well, I'm not doing that. So I'll pour myself more into this. And that was then my identity, because my identity wasn't as a mother. My identity was career woman. So I threw myself into that instead. And it's interesting when you're talking about the warning signs, because, you know, saying that we don't recognize stress, I knew I was stressed. I was ignoring the warning signs. There were so many warning signs. I was making myself really unwell. I ended up in, you know, the doctor's office crying because she wouldn't give me the contraceptive pill because my blood pressure was so high. And she was like, I think you need a lifestyle change. And I was like, how exactly am I supposed to do that? Where do I get that manual?
Yeah.
And I remember like my neck and shoulders being so, like, that's where all my tension goes. That's where a lot of our tension goes in our body. And I got to the point where I could not move my neck. Like, it was agony. And, you know, I was going into work and sitting at a computer and like, you know, like, I was trying to talk and couldn't move my neck. I ended up in physio through work, actually. You know, they pay for you to go and get fixed up as long as you're back in work after your appointment. And again, the physio is like, how have you got in this mess? He's like, what are you doing to your body? And I was just like, oh, well, you know, I'm really busy. And he's like, seriously, this is, you know, you have to really, this is a wake up call. Did I listen? Of course I didn't listen. You just carry on powering through. And it was really interesting because why do we ignore these physical signs?
Something you just said that triggered something. And is it because that we are still trying to chase that carrot, because we're still trying to get to the goal that everyone tells us that we're going to reach, Valhalla? You know?
Yeah, I mean, I look at it now and I'm just like, what was that? What was I trying to reach?
Or is it this? And this is what I find a lot. We get to that point where everything is falling apart and we believe that we've done something wrong. And we push harder because we believe that it's us at fault and not the situation. And so we consistently keep pushing until it gets to a really, you know, a point where there is perhaps no going back, or this is your final straw.
Yeah, I mean, I remember thinking, why can't I cope with this?
There we go. You know, I'm the problem. It's not that I can't have it all. You know, it's definitely possible, but I'm the one that's mucking this up.
Yeah, I remember thinking, and then, like you say, when you were saying earlier, when it's like tracking your period is another thing on the to-do list, the next thing on my to-do list was to self-care, but it became a list of actions. Like, I need to do yoga, or I need to do swimming, or I need to, you know, all these things that I need to do. And then when I don't do them, because, you know, this ridiculous, I don't have time, then you feel guilty because you're like, I'm not looking after myself. And there's just this cycle like continues of you beating yourself up. Like, I can't cope with the stress, but I also can't cope with having another thing on my to-do list that I'm going to feel guilty about if I haven't done it.
But the thing with the self-care is that most of the time it's what people tell us we should be doing. We don't have the time to find out. And one of the women said something really pertinent on the Instagram live in that about slowing down and listening. You can't hear what you need if you don't pause. And I think because people are too afraid to slow down, they ask others, or they read in the magazine, or they look online, what's the best thing for stress? Okay, meditation. Most people will sit there and they're not in meditation because their brain just can't switch off. It's a pointless exercise, you know, or they go and do the yoga because they've been told that. And so they actually move with tension in their yoga, you know, and now coming to your twist. Okay. You know, you can see that the stress, and you're like, okay, let's perhaps come back and start that one again, shall we? But they just can't move without tension. So you're just effectively moving more and more into what you are trying to move away from, because we're trying to have it all. We want to do the yoga. We want to do the meditation. We want to work 200 hours a week. We want the family. You know, where's the quality? Where's the quality? And, you know, the big thing for me now, as I come to my 40th soon, is where's the joy? I only want to do something if it brings me joy. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not naive to know that there's stuff out there that's going to come to me that's not going to give me an option. But I have a choice to choose joy. And that is what I want. I want joy. I want fun. I want loads of fun. Oh, excuse me. Woo! Sign. Yes, thank you. I want more fun. But again, this was me. I was doing things that I loved without the joy in, because it was a to-do, a tick. Another thing to notch off. Yeah, okay, we'll go for a walk. There's me. My family about 5 minutes behind me. I'm walking off. And I remember catching myself doing that. Like, Abby, why are you so far in front? And they're still back there. You know, and you look at those emotional blueprints of, you know, keeping yourself on the outside. You know, you don't feel welcome if you don't feel part of, you know, you will be on that periphery. And so again, emotionally, you might be striving to try and have it all, but really, are you allowing yourself to have it all?
And the thing is what is all for everybody, because it's different for each people, which is why I was saying earlier, is like half the time we don't even know what we actually want. You know, we're doing what society, what our family lineage, as you were talking about earlier, is dictating that we do, or what our friends are doing or whatever. And it's like, I don't even know what I want. What do I want? And again, you know, when I work with clients, I do a lot of work around values, where we actually just take it back to basics, and we go, right, and we have a series of cards and we kind of put them out on the table and we go, which of these things are important to you? And in the end, they end up in piles of like not important, very important, and important. And even the very important, there's loads of them. And you're like, well, they can't all be very important. Let's hone it down to what are the top 10 things that are most important to you? What are the top 5? What are the top 3? Because until you get really clear on what you want, you can't start to make decisions or make changes or say no to things so that you can say yes to others, which is kind of what I was talking about earlier. And some stuff has to give. You do have to say no to some stuff.
You know, coming into this, having it all, isn't it peculiar how women will strive for everything and push and perhaps get there, and yet they don't believe in their own body. They won't, they just don't believe that they can have a body they feel comfortable in, that they love and that they enjoy, because they are giving out so often all the time.
Yeah. And one of the things that you've taught me, and this was like a massive like light bulb moment when we first spoke, is like when you were asking me about, you know, when I started my periods and how I dealt with like my monthly bleed, and I would hide it. I would be like, you know, when I was younger, I would hide it at school. I was at an all-girls school. So why I was hiding it, I have no idea. But it was almost like, I don't want anyone to know I'm on my period, just because you didn't want to show any kind of, you know, that you're not on 100% form or whatever that might, I don't even know what it was. What was it? And then in the world of work, you know, it was this irritation of like, oh, bloody hell, it's my period. Do you know what I mean? And I remember being at work, and I'm just so, I can't believe I'm going to say this, but sometimes I couldn't even remember when I'd last gone to the loo to change my tampon. I was like, when did I go? Have I changed it? Because I was in all these meetings and I was like, I couldn't actually tell you when I last went to the loo. I remember once going to the loo and putting another one up there because I forgot I hadn't taken the other one out.
Oh my God.
You know what I mean? Because I was just like, what? So out of sync with that, and just kind of like, it was just like I say, this irritating thing that I was trying to like ignore. And what you taught me is like, you know, during your cycle, there are times when you really, really need to like step back a bit and just go with your hormones. And then other times you'll feel full of energy, like depending on where you are with your cycle. But I knew nothing of that. And my body was probably screaming at me to listen. But I was just like, no, I haven't got time for that. I haven't got time for that nonsense.
You know, I think most women are in that same boat, you know, until you get to a certain point and you find out about it. And I come back to the grief part of so many women experiencing the intense grief of perimenopause and menopause because they are saying goodbye to something that they never said hello to. You know, the depth and like the power from the menstrual cycle is phenomenal. And from the aspects, as we both know now, from your exercise, knowing how to exercise more functionally and efficiently so that you get more out of it on a mental and emotional and physical level. I mean, that to me is having it all. When you put all of that focus into your body, and it might feel like hard work, but it's really not. You know, it's understanding what, like you said earlier, what is important to you. And on the Project Woman course, I always start with, so what do you value? What are your values? And then people look at me and go, I don't have it. I don't actually know. I don't know what I value. What do I value? So, well, you know, if you don't have any values, how are you getting yourself to the point of health and well-being and to a place in life where you can just feel in it? You know, this is the confusion. It's just feeling full of life. That's having it all. That's having it all. To having that life surge through you. That's having it all. But how are you getting yourself there? You know, and these are the questions that you've asked your clients. What do you value? What is at the core of your values? But most of the time, we've never been educated to find that out. What do we really value? What's important?
And what do we really want? We don't know. And another exercise that I do with people, and you picked up on it earlier, is like, what did you want to do when you were a kid that almost like got bashed out of you? And, you know, as you say, not all of them, you know, when you're a kid, you want to do all these amazing things and it might not be practical. But more than that, you know, you wanted to be an actress. I wanted to go to stage school as well, and I wasn't allowed, right? There was this stage school on the hill and we used to drive past it. I didn't even want to go full time. I just wanted to go at the weekend. And Mum was like, no, you're not going. And I would ask her every time we drove past, I was like, please, can I go? She was like, no. But more than that, whether either of us would have been successful actresses or whatever.
I think so.
What are the other things you used to do for fun? So I was really creative as a child. I would go off and I would just like do stuff for fun, you know, like paint and draw and, you know, with no supervision, I just go off and do it. I used to read encyclopedias for fun. I was like a total geek. But like, that's where I've hooked my values back in, because it's like, what did I do for fun before someone told me that I couldn't?
And it does, this shapes when that's taken away, and there's no, you know, just in case my mother is watching this, there's no comeback on this whatsoever. It's just what happened. There's no like blame or anything there. But that does alter the rest of your life, doesn't it? Like the way that you perceive the ability to have and to reach for and to take. Well, if I can't have that,
yeah.
what's the point?
I mean, I understood it from my parents' perspective. They really didn't know what to do with a creative child, which I was, because no one was really like that. They weren't like that. So they were like, we don't really know what to do with this creative energy that she has. Do you know what I mean? And I think they were worried that if they encouraged it too much, that I wouldn't find some financial stability, which I get, right? Because to them, what was I going to do with that, like practically, as a job? And I remember my dad, when I said that I was going, my dad really wanted me to go to university because he didn't go. And again, I get it, because he'd missed out on that experience. He had a place, he didn't go. So he was like, I really want you to go. And I was quite strong-minded as a kid. And I was like, I'll go if I want to go, Dad. Do you know what I mean? Like, it has to be the right decision for me. And then I remember when I said I was going off to do like media studies, and it was quite a new course, like now everybody kind of knows what media studies is. But back then, my dad's like, well, what is that? What are you going to do with that? Where does it lead? And I remember him sitting me down, and with all of the best of intentions, he was like, do you know what I think you'd be really good at? And he came up with all these different careers that he understood and he knew. And I was like, well, that would just sound really boring, Dad. Do you know what I mean? And so I went off, and, I did want to work in the creative industries. And obviously I went into a commercial version of that, which is advertising. And I had an amazing time. Don't get me wrong. I don't regret any of those decisions, because I did have a great time. However, there were so many elements to it that weren't right for me. And I just ignored them and ignored them and ignored them. And like I say, because I worked in advertising, another one, when you were talking about the Gaviscon, I was thinking about all the adverts for sanitary products. So number one, our blood is not blue, right? And number two, it's showing that you're all off doing all these things during your period, like paragliding and roller skating and all this kind of stuff, right? And again, it's kind of creating this thing of like, just ignore it and pretend it's not happening, and push through and go and do all these crazy things, when actually what we should have been told is like, when that happens, it's okay to just have a quiet, thoughtful, restful day.
Yep. Any tampon camp, any sanitary wear out there, if you need some inspiration, just give us a shout. To see a woman, a bit like, remember the Flake advert? That was a great advert, when she was sitting in the field, just sitting there looking stunning, like licking her flake very provocatively. Yeah. A hot chocolate with your sanitary towel on, chilling out, reading a book. Way forward. So the big thing is really, who are you doing it all for? I think, Claire, you brought it up really lovely, in that sometimes we're actually doing it all for other people and their expectations. Which brings me to the end of our chat. Claire, thank you very much for joining me. We shall be back. We shall return on another topic. But please do comment, get in touch if this interests you, or check us out on Instagram. You Do You Coaching, Abby Adams. All right, gorgeous people. See you soon.
Take care.